if you think that sword fighting is too expensive, too complicated, and only for the elite athletes, then you're about 10 years too late. Because right now it's easier than ever to start learning real longsword skills in a safe and structured way. And if you're still waiting, it's probably not because it's too hard to start actually. You just don't know where to actually begin, right? And if you don't know me, hi, I'm Michael Kozin and I train longsword for over 2 years in historical European martial arts, which is the practice of sword fight. And I help beginners to start training sword fighting without elite fitness or expensive gear. And I went through that path myself. So let me show you why starting today is easier than it was previously. So section number 1, what it used to be like. So around even a few years ago, you had HEMA creators on YouTube telling you how you can train longsword, right? But each of these solo drills were isolated movement that don't explain to you the basic foundation and systems behind wielding a longsword. So it shown you how to do some kind of cut with a step to the offline step, then with some kind of parry, but you don't know what the system behind the parry looks like, and then some kind of riposte with the other, I don't know, like turning to the other side. Well, you could copy all of these advice, right? I did, right, when I started out, but it didn't explain to me how it all ties together. Or specifically, it doesn't explain what is the actual foundation versus what is advanced techniques or movement with a sword. So it's hard to know what comes first, what comes second, and then how to progress further from that point. So these were just flashy movements without structure, if you know what I mean. And it didn't teach me any, like, it didn't give me any beginner progression. I didn't learn much from it. Also, the gear, so the full HEMA gear, felt intimidating to me because I didn't have the funds to invest into this full HEMA gear when I was just a beginner, when I just started out training sword fighting. And also having a steel feather schwert, there was a high cost barrier that was just unavoidable. So don't get me wrong, there was information, but it didn't have structure behind it. Section number 2 is what exists today, so our modern advantage. Today, it's a lot easier to understand systems and structure behind longsword training. There is enough synthesized beginner advice that isn't too bloated to understand right away. So the advice that you can actually learn even from watching YouTube, like this video, right? You can already apply it to your own practice right away. You can already configure your own movements based on what I tell you or other HEMA content creators, right? These are real fencers, including me, who tell you what actually works because we tested it out in an actual sparring, right? In tournaments. So there are structured curriculums that you can follow to learn techniques, right? But the most common beginner mistake is impatience in this instance, because you want to already go into swinging a sword, so to some kind of advanced blade work, right? But you don't have the permission to do that from me, at least for now, if you're a newcomer or beginner, right? If you're just starting out learning HEMA, then the structure, so starting out from the first thing that you need to know before you even take a sword, is your stance, so your balance and your footwork. This is what most beginners don't want to hear. And also, today, you don't actually need the full HEMA gear to start your sword fighting training. All you need is beginner entry padded longsword. I'll show you the image right here, and a fencing mask. It could be even the most basic fencing mask that you can find, but of course it should stick to your head. And that's enough gear for you to even begin low gear sparring with your friend or your family member, right? There's also a lot of different online HEMA communities, like my own free school community called START SWORDFIGHTING, which is also a perfect place for beginners to follow a structured guide on how to start longsword, and also others, right? And that's how in HEMA remote coaching is beginning to appear, because just more people around start to get into sword fighting practice, HEMA specifically. So more practitioners means easier it is to find someone to spar with, train with, just in the open, in some kind of public park even. So that access problem is already solved for you, but the clarity problem is still not. So section number 3, the real starting point. So the whole core value of this video. This is where I give you the roadmap to follow if you're a complete newcomer or a beginner who already started to do some kind of basic practice. And that's why specifically here it's crucial for you to know the proper structure to follow when you're just starting out. I really have to hit the point because most beginners just jump around between different advice in online media, in YouTube. And I know how it is. I went through it myself. But I also learned from my coaches the proper structure of learning sword fighting. So I really want you to hear this and even write it down if you need to. The step 1 for you to start is your fencing stance. So let's recap what is a fencing stance. A fencing stance is where you keep yourself lower on your knees, so you're on your bent knees, with a position when the dominant foot is pointed towards your opponent and your rear or back foot is pointed like 35 up to 90 degrees to the side. And of course you bend your knees without falling forward to the back or to the sides. And this stance teaches you the balance that you have to have before you even start to swing a sword. So this is very crucial because you already train your legs or your hips how to behave when you're moving in sword fight. Believe me, the stance and the footwork which comes after is the most important aspect of sword fighting, even more than you think it is, because it lets you to have exact distance management in an actual sword fight. And most of you don't see distance management as something important. I know it. And also coming back to the stance, you have to be relaxed but also prepared for any action or to move in any direction. Step number 2 to follow is your footwork. So when you already know how to keep yourself balanced in your fencing stance, then and only then you can add on fencing steps to your structure. To advance to your opponent with a fencing step, you begin with the front foot forward and you just follow up with the back foot to end up in the fencing stance that you started, right? And to retreat from your opponent when you're maybe defending or running away, but of course with structure, then you start with the back foot first and you just move the center of weight to the back, also keeping your front foot also closer, right? But remember to not stick your hands together in this kind of motion because you will just lose balance easily. Don't ever stick your hands together because you may even fall when you're sticking them to each other very close. Of course, there is more footwork that you can use in sword fighting, so in fencing, right? But for now, at least stick to these fencing steps and you will thank me later. So I don't want you to give all of the information right now because you will just feel overwhelmed. For now, just stick to the stance and footwork. So the fencing steps. It's a controlled and balanced movement without any explosiveness behind it. So do it slowly. You can do 2 fencing steps forward, 2 fencing steps to retreat. You can interchange. You can go forward, then backwards, maybe forward, forward, backwards, backwards, maybe forward, forward, backwards, forward. This is how you train fencing steps. And after that, you can add on a thing called passing step. So in fencing, the passing step is a bit of like walking, but it's more structured. You begin with your rear foot first in your fencing stance, right? All of these techniques, all of these patterns begin in your fencing stance. So with you having balance on your bent knees. And you start with the back foot first, moving it forwards without turning your hips forward. This is how I use the passing step. You see, I don't turn my hips to the front, so to my opponent, I keep them pointed to the same direction. I'm just moving my foot forwards, then I end the whole movement in the fencing stance, sorry. And then when I retreat, I also end the whole movement in my fencing stance. So can you see the pattern behind this stance and these steps is that you keep yourself low for you to have more balance and to have more structure to balance yourself out, basically. So balance is crucial. It comes before the speed. So don't even try to add on speed right now because you're newcomer. And I don't want you to learn bad habits. And the step number 3, when you complete first of these twos, of course, comes your simple blade work. Simple blade work is when you finally pick up a longsword in your fencing stance, right? And then you begin to drill some kind of simple longsword cuts. The cut that I would advise for a beginner to train is for you to start in some kind of close, like neutral guard in a way. So your hilt is kind of close to your chest, but it's not behind you. So your blade isn't behind you, it's in front of you, but it also isn't pointed towards your opponent. So in this guard, you can decide to strike with a downward cut from your main side. If you're left-handed, then of course your main side will be the left hand, but I'm right-handed. So when I strike, I move the point of my sword directly to my opponent while extending my arms fully, while also not leaning forwards or moving towards my opponent. I keep myself balanced on my fencing stance and I attack slowly into my opponent, thinking that I'm going to hit him with the tip portion of the blade. So this is how it looks from the front. I begin the movement slowly. I don't chop, I don't cut with full force and ending here, because that's not the point of actual strikes. We don't want to overthrow our strike and leave ourselves open, but also this kind of overthrow attack makes our attack actually reach less than this kind of attack when we try to deliver the strike to the center line and keep it right there, right? It doesn't need to be perfectly pointed towards your opponent. It could end a bit of to the side, and it's completely normal. But you don't overthrow the whole cut. And also the second simple blade work, so downward cut, comes from your non-dominant side. So for me, it will be my left side. This is a bit trickier because then you have to cross your hands to pull out this strike, right? It's not comfortable, right? And that's why you have to do it slowly. So you just begin from the other side with your blade and you move the sword to the center, but you make the downward cut from the other side. So you extend your arms fully, you don't lean forwards, you stay grounded and balanced on your fencing stance, and you just learn the movement of the cut, of the downward cut from the left side. But the most important thing that you have to remember is that your blade work, even that simple one, comes after your footwork and fencing stance. Blade work without footwork is just mindless swinging. So this structure prevents bad habits that beginners tend to learn. So the things like overthrowing the attack and even making it reach less, so making the attack shorter. Also, structure builds long-term confidence. This kind of roadmap doesn't let you to feel strong and to feel powerful with a sword right away. That's not the whole point. It lets you to learn fundamentals, so the foundation that will help you out in the long term, believe me. And also, if you follow this structure, but if you do it slowly with smooth movement and intention, then it also reduces the injury risk. Section number 4. Now I will destroy your excuses that you may have in a kind of rapid fire dismantling. First thing, I need full gear. No, you don't. All you need is a padded go-now longsword. I will show you how it looks like again, and a fencing mask. And this is enough for you to train basic patterns, basic foundation, and already try to go into low gear sparring with some kind of friend who has to have the same things as you. So a fencing mask and a padded longsword. That's actually enough to start and keep going, because most of my initial skill comes from training with this basic gear. Second thing, I need to be fit first. No, you don't. Your fitness comes from training. You're not preparing for training by not training sword fighting. You don't need these prerequisites to start learning and training, of course, slowly, sword fighting. Third thing is, I need a club first. No, or at least not for now. You can build foundations solo, and the club is just the multiplier of your skill. It's not a requirement right away. Fourth and the last thing, HEMA is inaccessible for me. Not anymore. It's more open and structured than ever before. So you don't need perfect conditions. All you need is consistent basics. Section number 5. What to do this week. So it's a concrete action plan for you. It's very practical and easy to follow. So listen carefully. This week, first things first, you have to get a padded go-now longsword and a fencing mask. Then you have to find some space where you can freely swing your sword around without fearing of breaking something in the way or in your room. So it could be a empty garage, it could be outdoors space like backyard, it could be some kind of public roofed structure where you can swing your sword, and also it should not be wet, because if it's wet, it's easy to slip up. Third thing is train. So you have to train consistently each day between 5 or even up to 15 minutes a day. Your stance, your footwork, and then your cuts. And point number 4, join my free school community called START SWORDFIGHTING, which is where I explain to you the synthesized information that you actually need to know when you're just starting out without feeling overwhelmed. But also, this is where you could talk with me one-to-one, and this is where you can have the accountability from other advanced guys who want you to learn how to sword fight. So join right now for a structured beginner roadmap that I made. It's a free roadmap that anyone could follow. All you need to do is to just be active inside of this community. That's all. So you don't need me giving you some kind of motivation. You just need proper direction to follow. So listen here. You're not too old to start sword fighting, and you're also not too late, because it's the perfect time to actually follow up on your dream of knowing how to wield a longsword and also being competent at it. You're also not too unfit. You're also not too inexperienced. This is why I make these videos, because this is an invitation for you to start learning this kind of craft, which is beautiful, don't get me wrong. Of course, there is a lot of tragedy behind it, like historical death, wars, right? But the practice of sword fighting, for me at least, is one of the most fulfilling things in my entire life. And knowing how to wield a longsword is also just a coolest thing to know how to do, right? I just became some kind of swordsman in the eyes of my peers and my friends, just because I know how to do it. So if you begin your own sword fighting training, your own longsword path, then you're a swordsman right away. You just don't know it yet. And that's why you have to stay patient in your training, because you may not see the result right away, but the structure, so the roadmap that I gave you, and you can even find it in my school community, this is how you can keep yourself accountable by learning each of these individual things one by one, bit by bit, and not all at once, because this is how you can destroy your entire progress in a second. You can't become very good at sword fighting and longsword right away, just like that. And this is why it's cool as hell also, because do you know anyone who knows how to wield a longsword and how to actually sword fight specifically? not even just have a longsword, right? Because a longsword is just an extension of yourself. It's an extension of your will. So the longsword doesn't define you. The weapon that you carry doesn't define you, but your usage, your knowledge on how to wield it is what makes you a swordsman. It has never been easier to start training sword fighting. I'm completely honest with you. The only thing left is your decision to make. Start with structure, start small, and also start this week. Not tomorrow, not after 2 weeks, even today, even right now. Yeah. And remember, always take the initiative.